Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bullship podcast with Bill and Matt, where we're delving into everything you don't need to know about the supply chain. We have a special guest today, but before we get into that, for all 9 of you out there, like and subscribe to the video. If you are enjoying it, we have a lot of nonsense to continue to talk about today. Bill, this is your guest, so you're introducing our listeners, all 9, 10 of you, to Nathan.
This is an exciting day for us, Matt, because this is not just a guest. This is the first guest that we've had on this show. It is, yes, and it is none other than our good friend of the podcast, Nathan Cunningham, founder of Quick Build and general supply chain whiz. Hi, Nathan. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. I'm going to assume that you haven't listened to the podcast because nobody listens to the podcast. So just by way of warning, we do ask the tough questions that nobody else is willing to ask naturally. Mostly probably, I assume, because nobody cares about the answers. But this is just a warning that there are no softballs here.
I wouldn't expect.
You're in the hot seat now, buddy. So I hope you're ready for it.
Yeah.
I'm strapped.
So I wanted to start with a question, just right off the bat, a question for you, which is, tell us about your favorite Girl Scout cookie, because you've been talking about lemonades, and I realized that we don't have lemonades where I live, so I don't even know. Yeah, I know. This is something that Matt discovered didn't discover. He told us about this in a previous podcast. Depending on where you live in this country, there are different Girl Scout cookies.
What is the supply chain of Girl Scout cookies is certainly worthy of an investigation, right?
You should listen to our previous Girl Scout cookie episode.
You
Excellent.
clearly didn't listen to it, which is fine. Yes, go back now and listen.
So favorite Girl Scout cookie, if you asked me until 1 week ago, it was Samoa's and peanut butter patties, right? Like, easy.
You definitely need to listen to our previous podcast, because those are Matt's least favorite.
I know.
I think this is already starting out poorly. Go on.
Those are D-tier cookies.
Okay. So Matt says you should try lemonade. So for those in the East Coast that apparently are deprived of this, I was pleasantly surprised at lemonades. So this is a lemonade cookie, right?
Yeah.
And
the frosting is on the bottom, Bill.
Go on. I've done my research. So we'll talk about this. But yes, go on.
So it's not as like rich or indulgent. Like, I still think Samoa's got to be number 1, right? Which is fine. It's fine. But these lemonade cookies are so refreshing. You know, there's like,
yes,
it's a nice refreshing flavor that is different.
Yeah, it's not too much. It's not too little. It's just enough. Yeah.
And I'll say this. I feel like with Samoa's, you need a glass of milk to go with it. You don't really need milk to go with this, right? Like, this is just a very good standalone cookie, you know? And I'm going to eat this right now.
Yes.
So I will say I feel deprived because, like I said, we don't have them on the East Coast where I am. Instead we have Lemon Ups, which sound fine, but they're just a lemon shortbread cookie without the icing. And I feel like the icing, that sounds like it really, it sounds like it makes the cookie.
Whole new experience. Gotta be. I've never had whatever you're talking about nonsense up in Massachusetts. I will look it up now, but the frosting on the bottom, like the genius level of like maximal icing to tongue ratio, like get the right stuff right where it needs to be. It's fantastic. Highly recommend.
So I fully went into this thinking Matt is a lunatic. There's no way I'm going to like this thing. And
this is true.
I've eaten half the box, you know, so it's a good cookie. It's a good cookie.
Yeah, a broken clock is right twice a day.
That's right.
On the basis of that, I feel like we can all agree then, if Matt's right about lemonades, then Matt's also right about Samoa's, which is a D-tier cookie.
Absolutely not.
So I thought this might come up. I do actually have a Samoa here. I do agree with Matt. They're not my favorites, but I'm going to eat one just to annoy him.
Please. Yes. Good.
Coconut doesn't do it for me, but the rest of the cookie's pretty good.
It's in your teeth. It's just going to stick around all day. You're going to have to floss now. No.
Who likes flossing?
Anyway. So should we actually talk about supply chain now?
I'm still looking at Lemon Ups. By all means, feel free to introduce our guest, do the whole thing. This is kind of...
That's right. You already told us you know nothing about today's topic, so we can just, yeah. So Nathan, maybe just let's start. You are the founder of Quick Build, which is essentially the alternative ERP. Tell us about Quick Build, like what it is and why did you decide to go about putting it together?
Yeah. So, you know, I've had a pretty tech-heavy supply chain career. I've always been the go-to guy for Excel and reports and queries and all that type of stuff on all the teams I've been on. And when I quit Tesla a few years ago, I was asked to help someone with an ERP implementation. And so I did. And, I had implemented software before, but never a full ERP. And it was mind-boggling how difficult the software was to get started. And it clicked something in my head where SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, all these big players, they really don't have an incentive to make the software easy, right? Companies are locked into these for 20 years, 100 years. I mean, so what's the point in spending development resources on making the product better? So my core hypothesis of Quick Build is you shouldn't need a software developer to customize the ERP to fit your needs.
So I'm going to play the dumb role.
Comes naturally
It's
to
not
him.
hard, I don't think, right?
Yeah.
No, so this is my MO. What is an ERP? What does that stand for? I assume the P is for program. I do not know anything else.
Well, you're wrong. So ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning.
There we go.
It started decades ago, right? And it's supposed to manage all of your business operations and feed it into your accounting,
Okay.
right? And so what's interesting is SAP, again, decades ago, they come up with the software and they customize for everybody. And then they realized that customizing was difficult for everybody. And so they actually standardized everything. The problem is the only thing that's really standardized is accounting. You got a general ledger and GAAP. And that's the only thing that's like standardized among big companies, right? Like operations, so different. Everyone's different. And SAP realized this, and it was an intentional decision, right? And so you create your purchase orders through an ERP system. All your sales transactions go through there, your expenses, the whole shebang of money in and out, right? Labor or whatever. And it's supposed to be a single source of truth for your company's operations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is really ringing true to me because I was part of an ERP implementation years ago in another job, and we at the time we were coming from an implementation of SAP which we had just customized the bejesus out of to the point where we couldn't update this. It was not that we couldn't, but it was really hard to just patch the system, just put on a new update because it was so customized. It didn't really gel with what SAP wanted to update us with. So we were trying to implement this new system, and they kept telling us that that could just it would adapt to our our ways of working. But at the end of the day, it actually didn't. We really were very constrained by the new module that we were trying to implement. I mean, at the end of the day, like, it did not go well. I remember coming up on implementation on D-Day, basically, and one of my colleagues said to us, he's like, it feels like there's a freight train coming at us and we can't get out of the way. And like I said, it didn't go well. We ended up actually having to walk the whole thing back, and it didn't get implemented. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that, like, they had this generic program that was designed for a generic business like ours, but it wasn't actually perfectly suited to fit our actual business.
And here's the thing is, Fortune 500 companies, which is my whole background, right, is they have the resources to customize and to do this. Like, they have full IT teams. Quick Builds right now, at least, is really designed for smaller companies because they don't have IT teams, right? It's like, but they still need good software. They still need to be able to customize their operations and do the right things, right? Anyway, so yeah.
No, Nathan, this is the point of the program where this is the ad read part. So if you want to pitch it, by all means, feel free to pitch. This is the sponsored portion.
That's a good point. Today's episode of Bullship with Matt and Bill is sponsored by Quick Build. Yes. The ERP alternative. Take it away, Nathan.
Yeah, so the sponsorship fees for Bullship are so high. I had to acknowledge that Matt was right about a cookie in order to get on the show. I mean, that's your ego is.
That's why I'm wearing yellow today, is in honor of the lemonade being A, if not S rank, like S tier cookie.
But yeah, so Quick Build, low code ERP builder. We're offering 3 months of free customization for anyone buying a license. Licenses cost starting at $29 a month. So it's super affordable. And again, free customizations. I'll tell you, I've built a handful of companies now and have customized. It usually takes about an hour. And I'll tell you one of the best quotes ever. I got this in an email and he said I could quote it anonymously. He said, I spent about 30, 40 minutes and it was perfect. It's exactly what I needed, all while I was getting high. And I was like, that's interesting.
Okay. All right.
So if that's your jam, then I got the software for you.
If that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is.
Wow.
Yeah, so any software that you can operate in that environment is pretty good. So, yes.
The most rigorous of environments, clearly.
The most rigorous of environments, yeah. Thank you for letting me pitch for the sponsored ad portion.
Thank you for being a sponsor and agreeing with me, which is I agree, it is the hardest of sponsorship fees. Thank you. Welcome to the podcast.
And today's podcast is also, we should add, sponsored by Parabola, the spreadsheet alternative. And I feel like there's actually some nice symbiosis potential here because you guys are kind of both solving for one of the kind of like the same thing where like generally what happens in situations where your operations are, your system isn't managing your operations properly is people resort to spreadsheets, right? They go to Excel to get the job done. And Parabola, just like you guys, just like QuickBuild, is trying to put an end to that, right? They are the spreadsheet alternative. It's a no-code platform to process your data, drag and drop, really easy interface. You program in your whatever, all the steps you want to take to transform your data. Data goes in one side and comes out the other in exactly the format that you want every time. You can automate it. You can put it on a schedule. I could imagine a scenario where you've got QuickBuild on the back end, kind of doing the ERP, managing all the transactions, and then you do a Parabola workflow to just kind of blend all that data together so that you can get some higher level insights into your business and get visibility into exactly what's going on at kind of the top level.
Yeah. I would love to integrate with Parabola. We don't have any integrations now, but certainly on the top of the list. Yeah.
But you guys have been around for what, a month, 2?
We've been fully live for 1 month.
And you're coming on the best of all podcasts.
Yes.
Which is great.
I'm really starting with the high caliber.
It can only get better from here, Nathan. Let's be real.
I mean, you've told us, you've guaranteed that we're going to have massive viewership on this particular episode. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So I have a question, if it's okay. Do you know why supply chain people like Excel and spreadsheets? I'm curious if you have a hypothesis on this.
Oh boy, you're opening a can of worms here. Let's let Matt start talking and see if he can paint himself into a corner, and then we can negate everything he says.
Okay, so again, in the same way that that lemonades are an A, if not S tier cookie, Excel is an A, if not S tier programming program. Sorry, excuse me. There's not to say that Parabola, right, that you should not be using Excel. I know that I'm glitchy. Just keep rolling with it, guys. So why would you use Excel? Because Excel is the lingua franca, right? In every case, anyone who's in the business can know Excel or learn it in such a way that they can start performing at an easy, good level. So most companies are using Microsoft products. If they're not using Microsoft, they're probably using Google. Google has Sheets. They both do basically the same thing. And so the on-ramp is almost ubiquitous at this point. The other reason that you would use Excel, at least that I would use Excel, is that the learning curve is super easy, right? You can tell someone, hey, hit the equal sign and then type in math, and then boom, your stuff will work. So it's very easy. It's become ubiquitous. And up until a certain point, you can use it pretty well, right? I've used that document. I've used Excel for upwards of 1 million lines of shipments, right? In most instances. And I can do everything that I need to do in Excel. And then most other companies, right, other software stuff, the outputs are always going to be in Excel because, again, it's the lingua franca of the supply chain world. So that's why everyone uses Excel. That's why I love it, Bill. And I will not hear any heresy from you otherwise.
No, I'm actually not going to contradict you, Matt. I threatened to, but I'm not going to because
because I'm right.
I think you're right. I mean, from a lingua franca perspective, everybody knows how to use it, right? And it is actually, it's an amazing tool. It is super simple to learn and to use. Everybody knows it. Everyone's got the license. To Nathan's point, though, I think there's something else going on, and I think it actually has to do with why Quick Build exists. I think that from a supply chain perspective, everyone's on some kind of ERP, and those ERPs, we badmouth them a lot, but they do most of what you need, right? But they don't do everything that you need them to do. And but you need to run your business, you actually do need to do everything. And so where your ERP is falling short, I see this all the time, that's where Excel comes in. It plugs the gaps. And what always happens is you download a bunch of data from your ERP, you do whatever you need to it to get it into the shape that you need to complete the task. And then you either upload it back into SAP or your ERP, or you email it to somebody else or whatever. That's the standard. And it's because there are these gaps in our ERPs. There are gaps in them because, as Nathan, you say, like, they're really, really hard to customize. It's interesting, actually. I've talked to some other companies about their ERPs because I was super curious about this. And I've also come from situations where our ERPs are just like, I hate them. And so I went into these conversations assuming that everybody hated their ERPs, and I actually had a few people tell us, no, we're actually really happy with ours. And the commonality that I've found is that the people who are happy with them are on ERPs that are very, very specific to their industry. So like I talked to my neighbor who runs a foundry, and they have an ERP for foundries. And then I've got another guy, a friend of mine, who runs a lithography company, and he's got an ERP for lithography companies, and he's very happy with it.
We got to pause right there. That is the most East Coast like job functions I have heard in a lot. I'm like, oh, I own a foundry. I like make bells. And oh, I'm a lithographer. Like, stop it, Massachusetts. Just stop, please.
So
I love that you go to Bell's because he actually makes like very high-tech custom aluminum castings that go into like MRI machines and satellites. It's really cool. It's really cool. But I love that you went for Bell's because you just assume that like you probably think of the Liberty Bell or something like that. Yeah, that's all he knows about the East Coast. So Nathan, you were going to say something.
Okay, so I'll say one thing on Quick Build. So that niche thing is definitely what I've seen as well, and was one of the motivations, is that people that have an ERP dedicated to their niche are very happy, right? So spreadsheets, Excel. The reason why people like Excel, it's 3 elements, okay? And
no, wait a minute. He knew the answer to the question. He was quizzing us, and I bet you we got it completely wrong.
You guys are both wrong. Let me teach you. No, there's 3 things that are important that nobody in supply chain has ever asked why Excel has, so questions nobody asked. Excel has 3 things. It's a database, okay?
Oh, that is, well, yeah, I know. People use it as a database.
Friends. Microsoft has another tool.
Yeah, it should not be a database, but it is a database. Sorry, I had to say that, yeah.
And even if you export from a database, now it's a snippet of a database, which is
right.
So it's database-esque. It has calculations, which gives you the ability to manipulate it however you want, text, number. And then it's a user interface to make it look pretty. Those are the 3 things people need in customizations. They need it to look pretty, they need it to store information, and do their own custom calculations. Those are the 3 things. And Excel does it beautifully. Google Sheets as well.
It does. I'm glad. I love that you say it looks pretty, because one of the things that I hate about SAP when I'm working in it is that, like, I always say it looks like, that thing in the Matrix where they're looking at like these green weird characters just flashing across. Like, that's what I think of when I look at SAP. Yeah.
Every ERP I've ever worked in is just like, you clearly do not care about the like UI, UX. You are just here to like nuts and bolts. We're going to like build this structure, and like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to work because good luck finding another alternative. All right. We are nearing the end of this nonsensical podcast. I'm so glad that everyone has agreed with me today. Is there any like parting shots that we want to talk about? Bill, is there an ERP specifically for like lobstermen that you might know of? Perchance your catty corner neighbor might be a lobsterman.
That we don't have. I'm in a landlocked town, so there are no. Well, we're by a river, but there are no lobstermen in town. There are lobstermen in my hometown, and that's a great question. I need to ask them about their ERP. But I thought at the beginning of this, before we started recording, we said that we weren't going to do any supply chain chatter, but we didn't talk about any of the really massive, like colossal supply ERP implementations that I found out about. Let me just share one of them with you. I think, Nathan, I think you'll appreciate it, and Matt, you'll nod and smile maybe. Yeah. So I did find out. I don't want to talk about this one, but apparently the Air Force tried to implement Oracle, and they spent 8 years and $1 billion trying to implement it and failed.
Yikes.
I thought that was amazing. But I wanted to talk about this other one, Lidl. It's Lidl. I may not be pronouncing it correctly. It's a German discount grocer. It's like an Aldi. And they spent over 500 million euros and I think 7 or 8 years trying and failing to implement SAP. And there's some great nuggets here. So it started in 2011. They're on this homegrown ERP, and they spent all this time trying to implement it. And all the articles I came across kept citing this one problem that was the crux of what caused the failure, which was that their homegrown ERP based their inventory on purchase price, not retail sale price. And SAP was configured for sale price, and that required customization. And that one little difference was what just blew up everything, apparently. And they had other problems too. I think they had like a lot of leadership kind of changes, and I think not great leadership sponsorship, but the customization didn't work out. This was great too. 2017, so like 6 years into this failing implementation, SAP awarded them a prize for being one of their best customers.
I don't think that's a recognition you want.
No, it was great. But but so at the end of the 7-year failed implementation, one of their employees said we're practically starting from scratch. And reading some of the articles and some like the aftermath, I think, Nathan, you will appreciate this. Some SAP user group and kind of like the post-mortem, someone ahead of some SAP user group said, well, if a company wants to use the standard software, it has to adapt its own processes to the software. And that is so backward, right? You should not be changing your processes to suit a software. Your software should suit your processes.
I'm going to disagree with you, Bill.
Please.
Yeah, your processes might be bad.
Yes.
And then you need to switch to the right process.
Yes, 100%. So what you should be doing before you implement an ERP is audit your processes, make sure they're in order and in good shape, and fix what's broken, and then go and find an ERP that suits those processes.
To some extent, within reason.
So,
go ahead.
Matt, so here's the problem, though, is companies also change, right?
Yep.
And so what, the best process today is not the best process in 2 years, right? And so having a system that can't be flexible, right? It's like SAP, how long does it take to get an upgrade to fit this new thing, right? And so now these big companies and even small, like they have to use 10 different systems, 20 different systems, when the whole idea of an ERP was pitched as a single source of truth, right? And I think they're just failing massively.
You can't have a single source of truth if you're constantly downloading data out of your ERP to finish your work.
So here's where I'm kind of on it, right? At another company, and you've both heard the story about this other company, because in like January, February of 2020, they were changing out their ERP, and the CIO said, if we don't have this implemented by October of this year, 2020, we will owe a lot of money to our existing ERP. Like we are like moving full forward from like A to B. And then COVID happened, and I doubt that actually got completed, but I didn't work there anymore. So what I'm basing all this on, though, is conversations. We were implementing a new UMS. And again, I know that's a smaller implementation. But there were so many processes that we had in the warehouse for customization, for customer service, etc., that we had to then go like, hey, if we're going to spend all this money on this new customization for this process that we're doing, should we really? Like, do we really, like, does it really earn us the money back if we're able to do this? Like, do customers even care? And 99% of the time, it didn't matter. Nobody cared. It would not be worth the return. So we just said, stop doing the process. Just cut it. So that's my one thing. Now I know that ERPs are like for accounting, and you kind of need all that. But that's where I would say, like, hey, make sure that you know why you're doing that process and when you need to actually customize, because there might be a point where like, this is a bad process, we shouldn't be doing it.
I agree with that. So I worked at Tesla, and the CEO of Tesla has been in the news recently for, some things. But
Non-Tesla things.
Before he was in the news for all of that, he was pretty famous at saying, like, look at what you're doing, and if you don't know why you're doing it, stop doing it and see what happens. And it's like, that is very much the Elon mentality, which agree or disagree at the government level, whatever.
Now why he's in the news, yes.
But for a process perspective, it's like, why are we doing this? Let's just stop. You know, like, you should do things. You should experiment. You should iterate, right? So ultimately, to me, it's about iterations. It's like you should be able to iterate quickly.
And you can do that with quick build, and you don't have to spend 500 million euros for it not to work.
If you want to spend 500 million euros, I will gladly accept that.
We will as well.
Yes, I'll
Nathan,
split it.
We'll take a finder's fee. If you hear about this offer from this podcast, yes, get in touch with us.
Right at the top.
Gotcha.
So, Nathan, what kind of business are you looking for? Like, who are you targeted to?
To me, it's small industrial, and that can come in a few different forms. But, you know, $1 million of revenue, plus or minus, right, I think is like a good sweet spot. If you're feeling like you're outgrowing QuickBooks a little bit, what a lot of people do is they'll go buy an ERP, which is just another accounting software, but they don't need another accounting software. They need it for operations. And so I'm offering a better solution for the operations side of the business, right? At a much lower price, obviously. But yeah, industrial, $1 million or so. CPG brands are another that I've talked with. I'd love to support. I don't know that business super well, so I'm a little hesitant saying like, I can definitely do this, just because I need to have some more conversations and more people. But I'd love to support CPG brands also.
Awesome.
Lobstermen.
Lobstermen. Yes. Yeah. I want to be the go-to ERP for Lobstermen.
We're going to lock down that lithographer market, Nathan, for sure.
No, that's already locked down. He's happy with his ERP.
Oh, that's right. No opportunity. Maybe I can be the ERP for podcasts that nobody listened to. What do you think?
That would require us to have revenue, which we don't.
Right.
But maybe, who knows, after this, sponsorship dollars. I'm getting paid in compliments right now, which is great. I'm totally for it. All right. Are we done bullshipping?
I think this has been plenty of bullshit. Probably more than our listener can handle.
There's 9 of them.
I've had a tons of fun. I appreciate you guys.
Nathan, thank you for coming on and bullshipping with us. We've had a great time.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Matt.
Bill, I feel like this week is a special week for the podcast.
It's a super special week for the podcast. We have our first guest on the podcast. We find out about Nathan Cunningham, founder of Quick Build, to tell us about his favorite Girl Scout cookie. And also, we may or may not answer the question, do lobstermen need ERPs?
Bill, be less Boston. Be less Massachusetts.
Can't be done. Can't be done.